Yeah, I'm really excited that we have a full spectrum of gender and social equity related topics. I think it's increasingly important in the work that we're doing, so I'm really excited to learn from everyone here. Today I'm going to talk pretty specifically about a project that we're involved with called the 2 Bus Mission. So just to give a little bit of context, kind of adding on to what Ben has been saying is our work is not just focused on electrification, but really focusing on that avoid, shift, improve model. Keeping in mind that we need both modal shift and zero emission vehicles to reach current climate targets. We really can't do one without the other. And this is especially important with social equity in mind, in terms of air pollution, noise pollution, safety benefits. Really, the more work that we're doing toward both of those, the more social equity benefits we hopefully will be able to get. And just a little bit of context about the 2 Bus mission. I'll be focusing today on the work that we do within and adjacent to this mission. We're working with GIZ along with our other partners. You can see all of their logos there, many of which are online or in the room with us, to have 100,000 buses, electric buses in the procurement process by 2025. So that's a very lofty goal. And in order to achieve this, we are working primarily in cities in the global south with local partners. So we're really approaching this from local, regional, national coalition building, really working at different scales, and then direct technical assistance. On this map, you'll see these are our 20 deep dive cities. So with these cities, we're working really closely with their local transit authorities, their government, to really do everything from target setting, total cost of ownership models, business ownership models, really walking them through the procurement process, basically holding hands, which has been really helpful. One of the main pillars of our work has been gender and social equity. As we've been talking about, it's not just putting buses on the road, it's also about service improvements. Like there's no point in doing things unless we're really using this framework of gender and social equity so that we're improving conditions to make it better than it was before. And so part of our work really sees electric buses as an opportunity to do this, because it's an opportunity for our cities to really modernize their transportation systems. And so our last phase of work really delved deeper into this, especially through gender equity programs, as you can see, route prioritization, and accessibility enhancement. And I would love to go over all of the different cities that we're working with, but just to give a few examples before I dive deeper into some case studies. In Mumbai, they had an anticipated outsourcing of operations for 10,000 e-buses by 2027. And so the 2 Coalition partners created a business development and transition plan, which advocated for inclusively reskilling and rehabilitating workers during the transition to ensure a just and equitable transition. So our team also worked with the national energy company that Ben mentioned earlier, CESL, to establish requirements for e-bus tenders to employ 25% of their workers, have them be women as drivers, depot and factory staff, and really everything else that's involved with the e-bus procurement process. And this applies to 16,000 e-buses so far. Ooh, actually, I'm gonna go back for a second. Oh, okay.
Too much.
I know, I fast forwarded. Okay. We're just gonna go this way. Okay. And then I'm also going to talk about Guadalajara and Bogota, specifically a bus depot called La Rolita. I'm going to really delve into these case studies. So for the sake of time, I'll move into La Rolita. I apologize for the quality of these photos. I actually took them on my iPhone, so they're not the highest quality, but they're from the heart. So hope that it does some justice. First on the left, at La Rolita, I just kind of wanted to show something that I found to be really cool, which is the overhead charging. I've been to several other electric bus depots in Bogota and elsewhere, and this was the first I've seen that. It's a very new bus depot. It's less than 2 years old. And so part of this was it's very logistically helpful in terms of charging and It's primarily overnight charging. And then we had a TUMI e-bus mission related conference, and so some of us were able to tour. So basically, this is a new e-bus depot on the outskirts of Bogota. The IDB, C40, and others basically funded a program where women could get their C2 driver's license. And so 95% of the female operators who now work at La Rolita had to go through this process. And they have now 281 female bus drivers. And it's 60% of their total operators are women, which when you're looking at the entire transport system of 16,000 drivers, they only have 2% female operators. So this was a massive shift. And they have 600 employees overall. And so this was something that allowed women who previously didn't have any bus driving experience to get their licenses. And it's just kind of an example of the ways in which e-buses and the need for a just transition allow for programs like this to exist. So I guess to first go to the pictures, I found both of these really cool because I think they speak to the community benefits. The neighborhood that this is in is called Perumo. And it says Perumo con nuevos aires, so like new air. When talking to community members in the neighborhood who were not involved with the e-bus depot, they all were really happy about it, very excited, really only had positive things to say, which is not necessarily what I was expecting. But to have no more noise pollution, no air pollution, things like that, especially in an underserved area on the outskirts of Bogota, was really big to them, in addition to all of the jobs that were created from this. And on the right, you'll see one of the rooms in the bus depot was a lactation room for mothers, which I thought was really great. I visited a lot of bus depots, both e-bus and regular bus in Colombia, and it's all men. It's men, they'll have like, just very like, they'll have a TV with sports on, they'll have like, ping pong, like it's very much a guy's, game. And so it was really cool to see how this was catered to working mothers, because as I'll kind of go into, that's a huge part of the demographic of who's working in this. And they're also currently the operator with the second lowest number of accidents in the system. And in just a year and a half, they've calculated a reduction of 9,000 tons of CO2. They have 10 routes that go through the 21 neighborhoods of Ciudad Bolivar, and they reach 12 locations in Bogota. So then moving to Jalisco, we worked on a report with TUMI, specifically on the female driving program that they have there. Colleagues that were involved in the WI Mexico's last phase of work, Jocelyn Delgado and Gabby De La Torre, research. They did focus groups, one-on-one interviews, field work, surveys, and got a lot of data around this, and also just wanted to get a better understanding of the impacts on the drivers themselves. They also did some research that I won't really cover about informal and just understanding perceptions of formal drivers versus informal drivers, which was also very interesting. And I have a QR code at the end if you're interested in downloading the report. But some high-level takeaways from this was that new e-bus procurement is seen as an entry point to revise inequitable transport practices. It's an opportunity to remodel routes with data on underserved communities. One of the first things we do whenever we work with a city is we have to obviously reevaluate the routes because of the charging infrastructure and just the nature of buses. So when we're deciding how to change up the routes or which routes to do pilots on, we're always using that underserved data. Potentially, it depends on the locality, what that looks like, but we're using that to inform the decisions that are made. And it's also an opportunity to retrain the workforce for a just transition. And we worked with top-level government actors to mainstream the gender, social equity, and inclusion approach in transport. And we're still working with several cities in Mexico, potentially hoping to kind of bring this on a bigger scale. So some really interesting findings that I just wanted to kind of go through as quickly as possible. 58% of the female drivers are heads of household. Kind of going through this, connecting the dots, the majority of the women that are in this program are single mothers. And only 44% of the women who did the program had previous driving experience. and the majority of it was in Uber, taxi, Didi. So without the program, they would not have had any bus driving license. And the program pays for their entire training. It pays them during the training, and 100% of them were hired immediately after. So we also got feedback from the transit authority that this was really great for them because, as many of you probably know, there's massive bus driver shortages. And so this was kind of facilitating like supply for them in order to have guaranteed people who are trained well to start immediately. So also, like I was alluding to, 83% of the female drivers have children, and the majority of them are between 31 and 50 years old, and under 40% of them are married or in some type of a free union. So single mothers are the predominant group that kind of benefited from this program. So similarly to Colombia, the vast majority of bus drivers are men, with women making up 6% of the operators in Mexico. E-buses presented a similar opportunity here to focus on training and retraining to facilitate a just transition. And some of the working conditions and risks that were found through the field work that we did were physical discomfort, high stress levels, hearing loss, long working hours, and risks such as accidents and harassment, which I know we've talked about a little bit today. That affects the riders and it also affects the operators. So that was really interesting to hear about. Let's see if this works. Okay. And so some graphics here are kind of showing the ways in which e-buses were found by the women who went through this program to have opportunities to address a lot of these risks. And some of that included window defogging, assisted steering, and automatic door closing systems. And then going into more, we also have upgraded safety features that are associated with the new technology, which include full visibility for the driver, which I've heard a lot in the field as well, and also security cameras to monitor safety on the bus itself. I was able to visit kind of like the operations center of one of the cities in Colombia, and they have like live feed cameras, GTFS systems, and so if anything happens on one of the buses, it's immediately reported and they're able to get any kind of like management or police on the scene immediately. So it also alleviates some of the stress of the bus operator having to be kind of like the protector of everyone on the bus, watching for safety. And so that has also improved perceptions of safety, both from the operators and the riders. Another thing that I thought was really interesting is air conditioning, not as common as you'd think in many cities in the global South. In one of the cities we visited, it was 100% humidity and 97 degrees Fahrenheit, and there was not air conditioning on any of the buses. So doing our field work was really interesting because, you know, that was often one of the biggest complaints. And when you're talking about electric buses, people don't necessarily like get really excited about the greenhouse gas emission reduction, but they do get excited about air conditioning as a technological upgrade. So we also are seeing improvements for users, and users are definitely more interested in taking a bus with air conditioning, especially in the summer. Something else that we heard from a lot of the bus drivers was different musculoskeletal issues. I think 67% of them reported having some kind of medical issues that came from as a result of just sitting in the chair driving all day. And so also ergonomic seats have been reported by the people that we spoke with as really like having a massive benefit there. It sounds probably not as important, but it was really interesting to see how important this was to bus drivers. So our current TUMI e-bus mission work is focused on expanding upon many of these findings, using data and capacity building, as well as stakeholder engagement to facilitate the implementation of these best practices. There are many other case studies that I would have loved to go into, but obviously I had to focus on a few. But Curitiba, as well as Salvador and Brazil, have really also done a lot of work in gender and social equity. And so I also have some quotes here from a female e-bus driver and then also from the mayor. Basically, the idea of public transport fleets that do not poison the air in cities, that do not increase global warming, and that make people go and come back in full health is what represents the face of hope and the vision of the future. So it really is seen as a way to reinvest in transport systems after COVID, to help with service, to help with the operators, to help with gender, social equity. And here, I'm gonna move the Zoom thing so you guys can scan the QR code. But this will take you to the report. It is available in English and in Spanish. This is myself and a colleague in front of one of the electric buses from La Rolita. And if you would like any additional information or to get in touch, here's my information, or you can find me here. I'll be here all day. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you, sir.